Hello friends, and welcome to another special episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Poorly Written. So this week, my wife and I attended another Mystery Monday at Regal Cinemas. If you haven't heard of them, they're a special screening where, for a discounted ticket price, you get to see a movie before its release date. The only catch? All you know is the genre, runtime, and rating. This week, we saw a 3D IMAX presentation of Mercy, a sci-fi thriller starring Chris Pratt. The film is directed by Timur Bekmambetov, a Russian filmmaker that I first learned of way back in 2004 with his vampire flick, Night Watch. It was a big, pulpy, VFX-heavy vampire flick that I really enjoyed, and I've seen almost all his films since then. A quick summary of the plot. Mercy is set in a near-future dystopian Los Angeles, where crime has gotten so out of control that a new AI judge, jury, and executioner has been set up in order to quickly deal with capital offenses. This AI is called Mercy. It's unclear how this passed any sort of constitutional challenges, but the film doesn't really bother with that sort of thing. Chris Pratt, playing the creatively named character Chris Raven, is a homicide detective who is responsible for the first Mercy case. He's a husband and father haunted by the death of his partner and struggling with alcoholism. When we meet him at the start of the film, he's strapped to the execution chair in the Mercy court, accused of murdering his wife. And he's got just 90 minutes to convince the AI judge that he's innocent. All of that you can pretty much learn from the trailers, and I don't really want to say too much more about the plot than that, because I actually really enjoyed this film. And a lot of the fun comes from the twists and turns as Chris Raven slowly unravels the mystery, and I wouldn't want to spoil that for you. I have to admit, I had pretty low expectations for this film going in. I mean, AI gone wrong, while relevant to modern life, feels like something we've seen over and over and over again in films. And the setup of a guy strapped to a chair for an entire film seemed like it would get old real fast. But I was pleasantly surprised as the film really grabbed my attention and I was invested in the outcome. A big part of this is Chris Pratt's character. Now, I am a Chris Pratt enjoyer. I like him as an actor and fellow Seahawks fan, so I might be a little biased, but I think this is one of his more interesting performances. Because he is stuck in a chair for almost the entire film, there isn't a lot he can do physically. Like, he can't chase down a bad guy, or win a fist fight, or collapse on the couch after a hard day. But that doesn't mean he isn't active. Throughout the film, his character goes through the 7 stages of grief as he deals with the murder of his wife and his pending execution. If you aren't familiar with the 7 stages, they are shock and disbelief, denial, anger, bargaining, guilt, depression, and finally, acceptance and hope. Dealing with grief is a universal experience, and I think it was a fantastic framework to build the screenplay around. It works so well because where Chris Raven is in his emotional arc affects the choices that he makes. And even though he is strapped to a chair, he does make decisions that affect the plot. He might be physically restrained, but that doesn't mean he's a passive protagonist. I also really liked Rebecca Ferguson's portrayal of the AI character Judge Maddox. On a separate note, if you haven't seen her show Silo, I highly recommend it. At the start of Mercy, she portrays the AI as cold, unwavering, and an entity that only deals in certainties. But as the story progresses, cracks start to appear, and we learn that maybe there is more to this AI than an unfeeling machine that only looks at the facts. I also found Mercy interesting because it's a big budget take on the chamber film. This is a genre where almost all the action takes place in a single location. Some notable examples of this would be The Breakfast Club, Saw, and Rear Window. But it's also a common format for low-budget and indie films like Clerks, Buried, or Cube. It's a popular format for low-budget films because having a single location and limited cast is a way of keeping costs down. And in theory, having a character interact with screens and things on a computer would also be a way of making a film for a smaller budget. But Mercy kind of throws that all out the window. It starts with this simple premise and location, then completely blows it out of the water with intense visual effects, complicated flashbacks, and even a giant car chase, which, knowing the genre that the film starts on, is kind of hilarious. It also really reminds me of the recent Ice Cube film, War of the Worlds. Now, I haven't seen that film, but it has a similar setup. Guy stuck in a room looking at computer screens. And since that film was universally panned, and I quite liked Mercy, I think it would be fun to compare the two and see how exactly they differ. Maybe I'll do that in a future video. So, to wrap things up, if you can see Mercy in the theaters, I highly recommend it. It's a great thriller full of twists and turns that explores what it means to be human and how anyone can make mistakes. Until next time, be good and write well. Oh, one last thing. So I didn't know where to put this, but I really wanted to mention it. It's a small detail that I really liked about the film. So in the Mercy courtroom, Chris Pratt is seeing all these screens and they're like flying past him. And sometimes it's like a 3D representation of the scene that he's investigating. But he's in this chair in this room, and when things go past him, his hair moves. And I thought it was fun that in this execution chamber, in this dystopian future, they made it a 4D experience.